All right, well, I'm just going to jump in here, and my presentation kind of focuses on Douglas County. And this is a picture of the Hayman fire, and we all know that fires burn along the Front Range and certainly in Douglas County. Hayman fire began June the 8th, 2002, and was contained on July the 2nd, finally brought under control on July the 18th. So this fire had over a month of burning prior to just being contained. In all, 137,760 acres burned, 133 residents lost, one commercial structure, 466 outbuildings. Largest wildfire in Colorado history for the state and certainly for Douglas County. It cost over $39 million to suppress. Additionally, Douglas County spent a lot of money locally. Was human caused, and the Bayer burn severity map showed that it was also one of the most severe fires with respect to burn intensity. As Jim previously mentioned, the 4 Mile fire, certainly more of an interface fire, $200 million in insured losses as compared to only $46 million in the Hayman. 169 structures lost, and then another 14 damaged. Definitely the largest interface fire. Some real crazy fire behavior. You know, the first 14 hours burned 6,000 of the almost 6,200 acres. A little bit about growth trends in Douglas County. Douglas County is a bedroom community for both Denver and Colorado Springs. It's 844 square miles, and census data from 2010 said there were over 293,000 residents living in the county. It was the fastest growing county in the nation from 1990 to 2001, then ranked in the top 10 through 2009. With this development, we saw a lot of increase in transplants with the growth of the metro area. We saw a lot of move-ups in coordination with the growing economy. With that came a lot of development in the WUI. Land prices and homes were easy to afford. Saw a lot of local people moving away from these population centers, want a little more space for themselves. In Douglas County, the WUI is also geographically convenient to a metro area commute, so certainly provided opportunity for development there. With that, we had some perceptions on mitigation. Private property rights are a big deal. A lot of people recognize the hazard, certainly after some of the larger fires, and many folks accepted the risk and performed mitigation on their own properties, and other folks, didn't really want any part of that. They disagreed with a lot of the regulation and too much government. Whatever the opinion was, everybody moved to the WUI for the trees. A little bit about our program includes some different components. We have a regulation component, conservation, stewardship, and natural resource management for county-owned properties. We are part of different collaborative partnerships on both community and regional levels, and we have a significant education and outreach component. Our division is staffed currently by myself. We've had 2 people kind of in and out of there over a number of years. We have the flexibility to develop and implement the program as it's needed. We focus on serving the citizens. We provide a lot of education and outreach to internal and external publics, and our management strategies include resource conservation and for sustainability. In the early 90s, we realized we needed to take an approach regulatorily. So the chief building official, and at that time the 13 participating fire districts, led some efforts to develop some regulation. They sought additional stakeholder input from emergency preparedness, Douglas County Planning, Engineering, State Forest Service. What they did is they amended the 1991 version of NFPA 299, the standard for protection of life and property from wildfire. And this standard identifies minimum standards for access, water supply, structure design, and defensible space. We also adopted some water storage regulations, standards for water supplies for rural firefighting. A lot of areas of the county are pretty rural, and we don't have water anywhere close. So with a 4-parcel split, we required a minimum 30,000 gallons of water within 2 road miles of the furthest driveway. Both of these regulations are adopted as appendix chapters to the building code, and the program is administered by the building division, and the chief building official is the authority having jurisdiction. Regulations were amended several times. The biggest amendment, was in 2008, and now they're called the Douglas County Wildfire Mitigation Standards. In 1999, we added a section to the Douglas County Zoning Resolution. We added Section 17, and it's the Wildfire Hazard Overlay District. And the intent of this was to raise awareness for hazards and risks associated with development of the WUI at the beginning of the planning process. And we really wanted to focus on a development-wide approach to mitigation instead of a cookie-cutter structure approach. Wanted to incorporate the hazardous fuels reduction into the development infrastructure. This puts a little more responsibility, certainly fiscally, on the developer rather than the individual homeowner at the end of the process. And people tend not to miss trees they never knew existed. So how are our regulations implemented? Well, the wildfire mitigation staff is actually a referral agency for proposed developments. We rate the development. If through our rating system, you're either in or you're out. If you're in, the standards apply, and the staff determines if there's a need for a wildfire mitigation or a forest management plan. If there is a need for a plan, these plans need to be written by a professional forester with experience in the Rocky Mountain region and eligible for professional membership with the Society of American Foresters. Plan components need to tell us about current conditions, and describe the management activities, how they're going to reduce hazards and risks, basically how to what standards the fuels are going to be reduced. So typically we get a lot of developments with perimeter fuel breaks and or roadside fuel breaks, some open space thinning, depending on how the development's set up. Usually a review and comment exchange for these plans. They're approved by the staff, and the approved plan must be fully implemented prior to building permit issuance. And then additional defensible space is required on structures as they're permitted throughout the development process. Defensible space requirements need to be met at the time of certificate of occupancy. In order to assist with that and to encourage ongoing defensible space maintenance, Douglas County provides a /mulch site free of charge to the residents. Again, we work with Open Space and Natural Resource to develop management plans and implement forest stewardship projects. The county has 2 large forested open space properties. These are high-use recreation areas for pedestrian use, bikes, and equestrian enthusiasts. Both properties are held in conservation easement by various land conservancies. One of them is a forest legacy property. We work locally and regionally with different collaborative partnerships. We work with the Pike Peaks Wildfire Prevention Partners. It's a 3-county group. We focus on prevention, education, and mitigation. We do 2 field projects a year. This is a project we did down in El Paso County. Did some thinning along the Santa Fe Trail. We also work with the Front Range Roundtable, which you're going to hear more about, and the Coalition for the Upper South Platte on a more local basis. We have a gentleman in our water resource group who sits on that group. Education and outreach. We offer property assessments and mitigation prescriptions at no charge. We distribute a lot of educational materials in print and through our website. We have public service announcements, videos. We partner with local communities to develop and implement local level community wildfire protection plans. We also assist those communities to try and secure funding for projects identified in those plans. So we're talking about community wildfire protection plans, or CWPPs as they're known, and these are community-wide planning efforts to refine priorities for the protection of life, property, and critical infrastructure in the WUI. They are a focus on collaboration, and they bring together a diverse group of stakeholders. 2 key points are enabling legislation, the Healthy Forest Restoration Act, or HEFRA, of 2003, kind of where they got their inception. More locally, and here is SB 09001. When this legislation came about, when it was passed, it said that counties had 180 days to identify wildfire hazard areas in their county, and they gave us another. And then by July of 2011, you had to complete a CWPP for these areas. There are 2 types of plans that we kind of deal with, local plans and umbrella plans. And the umbrella plans, like the Douglas County plan is an umbrella plan. It's a 30-meter bird's eye view. It's more conceptual in nature, but it does provide specific recommendations for properties owned by Douglas County. And then information in this plan can then be used and refined for local level plans, and it's just refined for community specifics. A little bit about our process. We, like any CWPP process, we started with a core team. Our core team is fairly large. Each fire protection district wanted to be represented individually, and there are currently 10 of those. We had a lot of staff from Douglas County, a lot of other agencies, of course, State Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, but we really felt we had a diverse group. A lot of our focus was on public outreach and gained some stakeholder input and support. We created a website specific to our process. We housed everything from meeting minutes, maps, any draft products. We really wanted to be transparent in our approach. So we had, again, the website, we had these postcards made up, and anytime there was a public meeting or a community event, we had people handing those out and directing people to the website so they could find out more and get involved in the process. Lots of press releases, public service announcements, really a huge effort to engage stakeholder input and support. One of the part of the guts of the plan are this community risk assessment, and we did we created a weighted overlay of hazards, values, and risks. And then what we did is we drew some polygons around our population centers. We took the housing density and we overlaid that. We identified our communities. And what we've determined was actually we pretty much knew a lot. We knew where our hazards were, and but it was a great tool to kind of really just make sure that we were on board with where those hazards were. And really, what you want to do is end up at the local level. These local level community wildfire protection plans are a great tool. Really grassroots efforts to get communities together to identify, realize their hazards and risks, and identify strategies to reduce those. These can be really successful. We've had great success with a lot of them in Douglas County. Usually a project champion will identify themselves or some neighborhood spark plug, and really is very influential in getting the community to come together. There are a few other things. The state forester set the minimum standards, and in order for the plans have to meet the approval of the State Forest Service to enable them for public funding. They've got to create an action plan, identify fuel treatments on a map. Usually they contain another education component also. And so this is a project we did with the Burning Tree folks, I think several years back. They identified a community project as eliminating the ladder fuels in a bridle easement that essentially bisected the neighborhood. It was a great place for a project, huge community support, huge turnout. We actually did this in conjunction with the Pikes Peak Wildfire Prevention Partners, and it was just a real great project all the way around. So that's all that I have. All right, well, I'm just going to jump in here, and I'm going to